Hello, and welcome to the Kosh, the People's Podcast. I'm your host, Timber Smith, and the Kosh is a podcast that spotlights people who've had an association with the Kosh and the surrounding Fox Cities area. Kosh listeners, how are we doing? I'm doing pretty good. Well, minus some technical difficulties. Oh, and before we get too far in this episode, let me just say real quick, this episode of the Kosh is sponsored by Sunken Paddle Cider Works, making the best of it. Big shout out to our friends Spencer and Doug over there at Sunken Paddle. I appreciate y'all, and I'm wondering if they're still open right now, because it's that season, and I don't think they stay open for when it starts to get cold, and it is legitimately starting to get cold. And you may ask me, how do I know that it is legitimately starting to get cold? I'm going to tell you why, Kosh listeners, because my furnace decided to go on the blink. That's right. And so I don't know about you. First of all, I am super grateful that it did not go on the blink when it was like below zero or anything like that. So it is like in the 50s. But even when it's in the 50s, it is cold in your house. And so this is one of those things. And like, furnace is one of those things you don't think about it until you think about it. And I have had to think about it. And the one thing I've also learned about the furnace is this. It is an expensive girl to feed and fix. Boy, the furnace is no joke on the pocketbook. So, Kosh listeners, we are working it out. But I know y'all are thinking, well, Timber, if you freezing up in the crib, what's going on? And I was like, well, the one thing I'm not doing is I'm not freezing out our guest. I will promise you that. We are doing good for the guest. Okay, so that being said, you know what? I am very excited about this week's guest. I am very excited about this week's guest for a couple of reasons. One is because they work at my old spot at UWO. So big shout out to the Titans out there. And number two, I got to meet this person during a training. And I got to sit in a group with them. And I just felt like sometimes you meet people and there's just good energy. And we were trading knowledge. We were actually in an e-training or CPR. And if you have a chance to do it, we did it at the Oshkosh Public Library, but it's emotional CPR. Fantastic training, but it does force you to receive emotion and to be strong and share emotion. And it's a one-of-a-kind training, and I took a lot away for it. So want to send a huge shout out to Ebb and Flow out there doing those things and making amazing trainings. But back to our guest. So I got to sit in this training with our guest, and after we had a chance to sit in a couple of small group sessions, it was like, okay, she's about that life. She is ready to get on the Kosh. All right. So, and well, Kosh, listen, I think you know what's coming. I hope you know what's coming. First of all, I don't know how I continue to get these amazing guests, and this week is no different. So without any further ado, this week's guest is Sierra Skindzelewsk. I'm not even going to try it, but there's too many letters, and so I'm assuming there's a lot of syllables. You're going to have to help me on this one,
That's
Sierra.
That's what happens when you have a very Polish last name, Skindzelewski.
Skindzelewski. I put a J in there.
There is a J in there.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Well, there we go.
It's something, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a very Polish last name.
Sure is.
All right. Not that I knew it was Polish until you just said it, but I'm here to learn.
Love this moment for us.
All right. So, well, Sierra, how are we doing this morning?
Oh my gosh, I'm doing great. I'm so glad that we can kind of reconnect after having our CPR training. It was so cool to be able to hear more about your life and the work that you do on the podcast, and being able to kind of have my own episode is very cool. And so I'm excited to, learn more about myself today, and also be able to share some, hopefully, words of wisdom with the audience.
Bruh. Facts. Yes. I think so. And I just think it's always good for us to get to know our neighbors. Like, it is a great, great opportunity to know our neighbors. So what I'm going to say to you at this time, because I'm big on creating repetitive moments within the podcast, and it is this: happy podcast day.
Woo!
Well, that's what it is. I'm going to start telling people happy podcast day, because that's what it feels. It's an event. All right. So, Sierra, can you please share about yourself and your connection to the Kosh and the surrounding Fox Cities area?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here's the thing. I moved to Oshkosh back in 2015 when I started at the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh. And so my story really starts there because I think a lot about who I am has really started with Oshkosh being my, first real big chapter in my young adult life. And so from there, first generation college student turned into first generation higher education professional. So
Bruh.
hey, that is a hard thing to do. Also, it's funny because higher education tends to suck you in. It's not something you intend to go to school for. It's something that finds you and you just end up loving it. And so a spirit of education, lifelong learning has just been ingrained in me. But I am a twin granddaughter, friend, lifelong learner, self-proclaimed cat lady. I have 2 cats, Foxy and Archie. And they're so cute and fluffy and fun, and have done multiple road trips out and back from Utah with me when I was in grad school. So we are just, joined at the hip. But I love creativity. Being able to connect with new people is really my jam. Being able to be immersed in storytelling and being able to hear about the life of someone else. Like, I just bask in that level of joy, because I think what's important to me is being able to have a spirit of connection with others. And that's what I love what the Kosh is all about. And so I went to school. I took a 5th year, graduated in, the pandemic, 2020. That was
you're one of those COVID grads. That was rough.
It sure was.
Because you didn't even get a graduation.
No.
You got your name ran across the screen. And the reason I know this is because that is when my daughter graduated.
Oh.
And so it was like,
sharing that pain. Yeah, it was hard, especially being a first generation college student. It took so much extra. Well, and I don't want to make a comparison like that. It just took a lot for me and a lot of moments of growth to get to that point where I was able to graduate and go to grad school and whatnot. And so not having that, kind of capstone moment on your education to walk the stage, really, bothered me. But it's interesting now that I work at UW Oshkosh that this past year I was helping lead students in with commencement and seeing them have their big moments. And I think that was a different form of healing energy for me there too, which was very cool. But I love Oshkosh. I graduated in 2020 where I moved to Salt Lake City and went to the University of Utah where I finished up my master's of in education in the Educational Leadership and Policy program. From there, I worked at UW Milwaukee for a couple of years, but in both of those areas, I missed Oshkosh so much. I've discovered who I am and who I want to be from the people in the city and the experiences I was able to have. And the greatest challenge, but also the greatest amount of support and mentorship within Oshkosh as a whole. And so it's been such a special place for me my entire adult life in ways that I couldn't have imagined. And so as soon as a position opened back up at the university in April, I was hightailing it back here. And being able to be back with my colleagues and friends was a really magical moment. And so, that's what brings me here today is those new opportunities and special moments to re-engage.
That's what I'm talking about. And you know what? I feel you on that. I think people underestimate the quality of the individuals that work at the university and how the experiences with them while you are growing as a young adult, they're growing you and mentoring you and guiding you to what you hope is successful adulting. And I feel like they do a really excellent job. But then I'm also biased because I used to work there, so I feel like I did an excellent job too.
You probably did, so.
That's just how I feel about it. Bruh. You know what I'm saying? But, no, your energy makes me excited, and it reminds me of when I work there because the thing I really love the most about working on campus is young people keep you young.
Mm.
So while you're walking around and working in a learning environment, it forces you to keep learning. And there's something to that because every professional environment does not do that.
That's true. Well, and it's really the way that you spend your life. You want to be able to use the skills that you want to use. And a lot of that for me is being able to be challenged and come up with new solutions and have different like dialogue that's going to help me think differently. And that's what the space is all about. And students teach you to think differently. They push you out of your comfort zone. Like, so do your colleagues. And I think that's part of the magic of being in a learning space, a learning environment like that.
Facts. Okay. Well, let me ask you the next big thing, and that is this. If you weren't doing, well, you know what? Before we go there, let's go back and say, what exactly are you professionally doing right now?
Yeah. Well, so at the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh, I'm the outreach program manager in university event and conference services. So, you know what? We're a brand new department after the restructure, which gives us a lot of opportunity. The former Office of Continuing Education had been dissolved, unfortunately. However, leaves opportunity for different programming now in a new kind of a new place of envisioning of what the community needs. And so a big chunk of my role is managing, kind of developing content in education for workforce professional development in addition to new programs and picking up different ones that currently exist but need a new home. So Chancellor's Executive Breakfast, the Women's Alumni Network. One program I'm really excited about in building right now is called Emerging Gen. And so that focus is all going to be about creating new immersive educational experiences for 9th through 12th graders in partnership with our faculty because we know there's so much talent there. But also, we need a space where more professionals on campus can support that level of work. And so what we're trying to do is become the catalyst for that, for innovation and bright ideas, because being able to be a centralized space with events and conferences, we can work together and very smoothly because we have a really solid team to create community impact. And so some of that will look like, for the professional workforce development piece, credentialing, being able to help people upskill in their careers, and I don't know, just continue learning the skills that they need to in order to advance the highest levels of their professions. And that doesn't necessarily mean in like a higher education place, but like in a variety of different careers in the area. Because we know we have a lot of hardworking people in our communities, and we want to be an accessible space for people to advance and continue learning for the rest of their careers.
I've had the opportunity to go to that Chancellor's Breakfast, and they always bring in a fire speaker. Like, it's really, really good.
Yeah, we just did the very first one as like our new team with Daniel Burris, and it was such a well-attended event, and it was very cool to see how the event has really been a great way for community outreach, and also thinking in the future, especially now that we'll be getting a new chancellor over the next year, how that space can continue to connect community and grow and expand.
Yes, I think that is one part, and I usually only have the kindest words for UWO, but I do think stronger community outreach could be done, and it would be really, really helpful. I just think that is the one opportunity pocket I think that that great university does have.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
So what, maybe if you could pick one or two of those pockets, like what do you think people really need to hear, pay attention to, do something about?
Ooh, that's such a broad question. I need you to narrow that question.
What came to mind when you were thinking that?
I just don't think, okay, what I think you have is because I don't know if UWO is still the second largest employer in Oshkosh, but it might be. And it used to be for sure, right? And you have all these people that are employed there, and they love the establishment, and they've been around the community, and they're immersed into the community, but they aren't always engaging as UWO. And so that representation, so people understand, there's not necessarily an intentionality about that connection, that this connection is me as a representative of UWO. And so I just think there's a disconnect. And when I say there's a disconnect, because if you really understand, I've lived in the Kosh for 30 plus, right? There's the disconnect between the locals and the university in a sense.
Yeah.
Unless you're a business owner. But, as somebody who's married to somebody very, very local, my feeling, and this is just my perception of it, is I feel like locals who didn't go to UWO look at it as it's that thing in the center of the city.
Yeah.
that they don't even drive through, right? And even though there's programming to have people on campus and come see speakers and come see performances and other types of events, I don't know if we're doing the best job to really, really invite them in and say, no, you're really welcome. And also having that representation out there, ambassadorship almost, to go out there and really show, oh no, this is UWO. I think there's all sorts of things UWO does within the city to make it better or to improve or to share talent with or to share all sorts of knowledge, content, whatever, right? But we don't always say it's UWO. And so then there's the missing of the connection.
Yeah.
And that's my perception.
No, I appreciate that. And I have to agree with quite a bit of that. And one thing that, being a new department, new area, a lot of what you have to do, or at least the way that I've approached it, is you have to learn a whole lot, read a whole lot, listen a whole lot. And so even having meetings with community leaders and other just citizens in the area who have opinions and things to say, and learning about different approaches to building community. And one that has been really helpful for me is an asset-based community development model, which that's really focusing on how do we build strong connection in our community. It's by focusing on the strengths that we have. And so assets are people, community spaces, institutions, things like that. But you can map those out to see where are your areas of community strength and come together and work together, because it can't just be in these silos, because that's when you get the building, just in the center of town that nobody drives through, that is like, what the heck is, and I think anytime we have a space of higher education, and it can easily become a space of othering and whatnot, or this is for me and this is for you, and how is there a level of that integration of how do you utilize this space and create it part of your own, which is so important, and being able to create community together that is sustained by community.
Oh my God, yes.
Bruh.
And the most important thing is this, what I think is missing, and maybe I needed to say what I said first for me to get to the point, is I'm not sure that the university itself is doing a good job to go out and listen in the community as the university. Yeah. Right. And just say, because you're right, that othering can happen fast on both sides. I'm not saying one's better than the other. What you don't want to become is that ivory tower, or the perception of the ivory tower in the middle of the city kind of thing. Or you don't want to, as far as being a local, and then, that's where I'm going to leave that. That's the perception you don't want from either side, where as the institution, you're looking out and you're saying, we're the institution, and you don't want the locals to look in at it and say, oh no, that's not for us. It's not meant for us. Well, no, it's meant for all of us, because it's one big community thing, and, it's interwoven, and Titans are everywhere around here.
It's true.
Everywhere around here. I really feel like we need a Titan handshake. Or we need a saying. And I've been saying this for years. Like, we need a saying that you say, like, when you see a UWO person and they've got like a sweatshirt on, and you know how Alabama says "Roll Tide"?
Yep.
So we need our version of whatever that is for us as Titans. And I'm biased, so I'm kind of like go Kosh or something like that.
That's so cute. Well, I feel like those are different exchanges, like for bids of connection with each other, and
Correct.
That's a form of community building, which is very cool.
Yeah. So I'm all about that. Well, apparently, because I'm a Kosh podcaster.
Hey.
Hey. Okay. Thank you. Now my question is,
Bruh.
if you weren't doing what you do right now, what would you like to be doing?
Oh my gosh, I've thought about this so much. If I could go back in time, I would have had like 5 majors. I was an anthropology major in undergrad, but I wish Could have done communications, poli-sci, psychology, like journalism, things like that in general. But I really want to write, and I would love to publish a book someday, just things about my life, but also like building community and whatnot. I find that so important. But one thing that I find so interesting is the way that women so often create the magic in our lives. At least in my family, like my grandmother has been like the matriarch for forever, doing like the emotional labor and decorating for the holidays and baking and cooking and like doing all of this. And I'll get to talking about my grandma more and her relationship that we have. But I would love to do like a piece kind of interviewing women to talk about how do you create magic in the spaces that you're a part of. And also when we ask people that, I think so many times they haven't thought about it. So you get to reclaim parts of your magic, your power, when you can identify the ways that you didn't realize how amazing you are. And I think that would be such a cool project to do. And other projects and other pieces where I can write and learn about people. And so if I had all the time in the world, I think I'd do that. But honestly, I think I need to just challenge myself to do that outside of the 9 to 5 anyways. So that's on that.
I'm not going to lie, Sierra. I'm biased, but that sounds like a podcast to me. So when you need help creating that and producing that, I know a person.
Well, you know what? The world heard it right now. This is the receipt, so I will absolutely be reaching out.
Yeah, you know what? Keep the receipt. Keep the receipt.
Yeah.
No, it is facts. I would be happy, and I agree with you 1,000%. And I felt that when you said it. That's the minute you said it, I was like, yes, that would be some powerful sharing and storytelling. And like how many women hold the historical fabric and tapestry of their families down, and how many ever really get to talk about that? Not enough.
Well, and and it becomes so normalized that we lose how special that can become.
Until you lose it.
Exactly. And it's the loss where all of a sudden you're like, I can't celebrate in the way I could if this person was here. I can't ask more questions. And I think, there's a piece about, one, we live in a patriarchal society, which makes it difficult because anytime you have a structure that is so deeply rooted and embedded into your culture, that is going to frame how you show up in that culture, right? And I think this is part of the issue we have about celebrating women in our families, our lives, our friends, our communities. But there is something to be said about being able to say thank you and being able to list all of those reasons why. And I think there's a lot of women in our lives who'd be like, but that's just what I'm supposed to do. I'm like, no. And I think there's socialization plays such a critical part of our lives about the way we show up, the way we interact with other people. And so I think sometimes women are socialized to think this is just how it is, and this is how I'm supposed to show up for my family. And sure, but also at the end of the day, a lot of people don't have to. I'll talk about this later, but being raised by my maternal grandmother after my mom passed away, she didn't have to do that. But she found that there would be no other way. And it's that level of power and love and devotion that there's something so rich and beautiful there. And something that is so healing. Like, women weave the baskets of connection into our lives in so many instrumental ways. And it's something that I'm just so grateful for, and something I'm consistently contemplating, because my gratitude is only as far as I can think about it. And I need people in experiences that I can still remain challenged in that way, because I don't want to be complicit in my gratitude and thanks to the women who raised me, who helped me to think differently, who have encouraged my education, and honestly, who transform my life every single day.
Okay. Feeling that.
Yeah.
You're going hard. You're going hard.
I'm someone who just like feels and thinks very deeply. And so anyone listening, that's probably what you're going to get today. So,
and this is the Kosh. So, I mean, seriously, we don't want it any other way than that. Sorry. I will make my opinionated statement is this. I personally feel of course, not all our cultures to me are patriarch cultures in America, because I do feel Black culture is more matriarch than patriarch.
I appreciate that.
We do it different, and how our women are celebrated, and I do feel they're celebrated, they're honored, they lead. Yeah, it's different.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. And that's just a perspective, but if you really look at it, one of the primary examples I always try to point out is because I think capitalism is very telling. And so the first Black billionaire, and when I say Black, I don't mean like African, or I mean African American billionaire was Oprah. And if it's not, and so capitalism, if Black woman is our first Black billionaire, it says something about how our culture, how our culture's hierarchy is framed and built here. That's just my personal perception and opinion.
No, I really appreciate that. And I should say, for anyone who's listening today, like, I am a white woman. So I'm speaking from my experiences. And so I'm not trying to generalize, but I think that's the way that message came forth. And so I apologize for that. And I appreciate, no, but like, I want to take that though, because I don't want to speak for everyone, but these are experiences that I'm finding. And so I think going forward with the rest of the podcast, that's kind of where I'm framing it. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
No. And trust me, it's no thing. What I always like to do is, for the context of all our listeners, just because we have this broad swath of diverse people, and sometimes it's the first time we're talking about things like, maybe it's the first time they've really had an opportunity to have that conversation. So I just like to drop these little textures in there just to make it a little more rich in the reflectiveness when people are thinking about what was said during these conversations. It's never to correct or shape my guests' words. I always want to be, because I'm lucky to have guests. Bruh. Okay, so you ready to jump into the first segment?
I am, yeah.
Okay. The first segment is called What in the World is Going On With? This is where you start with the phrase, what in the world, and you tell us what's on your mind.
Mm-hmm. What in the world is going on with the lack of third spaces?
Bruh.
I've thought about this a lot, and I've had conversations with several of my friends. So third spaces are like basically the spaces that you can go connect, have community that you don't necessarily always have to pay for. And even like going for coffee, that's like $6, $7, $8. Like, it's things like that. And so, and I mean, we have underutilized spaces like the public library and things like that too. But when I think about the spaces that at least me and my friends hang out at, it typically costs a little bit of money to do that, unless you're going to someone's home and whatnot too. But that's not a third space then. And so where do you go to hang out with people to create community that doesn't cost money all the time? Like, I feel like that's increasingly more difficult.
When you put in the part where you don't have to pay for that, that changed the game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Yeah. Because I was thinking all sorts of, well, I'm going to be honest. For Oshkosh, there's only so many third spaces in my mind that first came to mind. But the minute you put that financial contingency on it, I was like,
you're like, oh no.
Well, actually, I came up with parks. And we do have a really good park system here. But we can only use that during certain portions of the year. So, yeah, no, it's not an all-time thing. I don't know. What's your answer?
I mean, I think we need more of those spaces, but I feel like that has to be developed and sustained by community in order. I don't know exactly what that looks like yet. I agree, like, parks are great, but also difficult when it comes to, Wisconsin being so cold.
Bruh.
Oh.
Facts.
You're right. So you know what? If anyone has any suggestions of great third spaces, I'm all ears.
I'm going to put some thought into that. And gosh, listeners, I'm putting a challenge out there. Where are your third spaces? What don't we know? What aren't we unaware about? Feel free to email us at askthekosh@gmail.com. Also, leave us a voicemail. I'll play it in a future episode, 920-385-5073. All right? That's a really good one. And I'm sad that you didn't have like a a third space ready on deck.
Ooh, yep.
No,
we're working on it.
We're working on it. All right. Maybe we need to create that.
Mm-hmm. Next project. I'm trying to think now. Now I'm going to play it in my head. Like, where are our nonprofits who might be third spaces? Mm-hmm.
All right. Love it. My what in the world is going on with is, and I think I'm going to create a term. Sierra, I'm finna create a term. Okay. What in the world is going on with tip taunting?
Bruh.
Yes, tip taunting.
Uh-huh.
All right. So here's my thing. So I went to, I'm not even going to say where I went. So I went somewhere, and the person that was on the cash register was struggling. And it was only because it was probably like their second or third day. And I'm super patient with stuff like that. I could care less, right? Everybody's got to be a rookie. And so you get that opportunity, right? But here's my problem with that. I didn't understand the level of struggle until after I placed my order. I watched them struggle through my whole order, but then they forgot my order, right? Now, here's the problem. When you're paying for it up front while you're ordering, and you've got the machine asking you for a tip, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you've got the person looking at you trying to see if you're going to tip, right? There's pressure there.
Mm-hmm.
There is literally taunting. Tip taunting is what I feel like, right? Because it's not like they're turning their head to see if you press tip or no tip, or what level in which you tipped for, any of those things, right? And then, so I tip, and then I get horrible service.
Oh, yeah.
And then, but I already tipped,
Mm-hmm.
right? And just the amount of times you're asked to tip. Because it's like anything electronic now almost asks for a tip. And it's just over and over and over again. And it's just like, oh. So what it tip, and I feel taunted by the number of times. Like, so if you go out and let's say, Sierra, I'm sure you can relate to this because you feel fairly coshed. So you go to several establishments, right?
Sure
If
do.
you're going to go kick it, you go kick it. You're going to stop in over here on Main Street. You might swoop, it might be like some Ruby Owl kind of stuff going on. I might swoop over, do me a little back is. I'm going to hit some spots, right? I'm going to hit some spots. And while I'm hitting all the spots, I feel like all the machines just keep asking and asking and asking, and there's just pressure and pressure and pressure. Whereas like before, I feel like, all right, you do something, and if I know I'm gonna sit there for a minute, I'll just drop like a nice little 10 spot or a 5 spot, so the bartender or whoever knows, or the server knows, all right, I'm putting this down at this point. We good for now. We good. We make that understand. We have an understanding. I feel like a tip understanding. But with the electronics constantly tip taunting you, I really do feel tip taunted. It feels different. It just feels different. And maybe that's just me, but I don't think I'm the only one that feels that way. And also the fact that you are kind of forced to tip at point of purchase. If you purchase up front and your service is trash, I can't get my tip back. Now here, and I preference this, Kosh listeners, by saying this. I typically tip well because I've worked in those industries. I've worked in all the industries. If it's that face-to-face hard customer service industry, yes. Have I done the fast food? I definitely have. Have I done retail? I definitely have. If I've done whatever customer service interaction type of industry, yes, I have. I've been on phones. I've done all the things that are hardcore. So I've even delivered papers. So that means like if it's a job that had tips involved with, I've been tipped, I give tips. But I just feel it feels different now. All right, Sierra, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's even times where I've gone for coffee with a friend. We've gotten 2 coffees and bagels, and with tip it's almost $50. Like, this is Oshkosh.
Bruh.
And also, I don't want to not tip because now I feel obligated. But also, yeah, you don't necessarily know what service you're going to get and also wanting to like tip people for the work that they do. But it seems excessive. Like it's interesting because even the way that tipping culture in a space like a coffee shop or something, like I think that tipping makes sense, but when it's prompted in the way that it is, it just feels very obligatory when I don't know. And it leaks over into tipping culture in other industries. When I was working in Milwaukee, I was also working part-time as a bridal stylist, which was an amazing experience. And also like there's a tipping piece of that, but I think sometimes people are caught off guard. And it's never like something that people expect, but it's after you've, worked with people for up to 2 hours, sometimes helping them find like the wedding gown that they fall in love with. Like there's a lot of more that goes into that experience, and it's working through fears and body image, and it's so much. And so sometimes people feel so inclined to tip after, but sometimes it's like, oh, like you do get the complaints of everybody needs a tip. And I'm like, it leaks into all those different spaces too.
Bruh.
Oh,
Right. And then it's uncomfy. And I imagine like there's people who probably feel uncomfortable about it when they're on the other side of the counter too, being like the hesitation, or people being like, the tip taunting. Well, it's true. And also like, ugh.
it is. I would like to shout out all of those people out there who ring up things and turn their head when the tip thing comes into play, because you're a true professional. I want to give y'all a shout out. I see you. You are not the tip taunters, but there are tip taunters. There is unapologetically, there are tip taunters, and I just want to call it out. You heard it here worse. I'm creating the term. Yes, I think it's a thing.
I'm gonna start using that.
Yes.
Yeah. That's gonna build into my vernacular now.
Yes, I might have to call people out on it and just be like, man, don't be tip taunting.
Yeah. Well, now you're talking about like, people who turn away. I think that there's some like, standards there. I feel like you do need to look away now. Like otherwise it's uncomfy.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And not just that. Here's my thing. Okay, so and I used to make this mistake. So if I know I'm going to go up multiple times, I usually like to tip heavy the first time and just not tip anymore. Mm-hmm. But now that thing hits you like every single time. And then it's like, if I tipped heavy, and I've done this by mistake, tip heavy in the front, and then it's like, it's sitting here taunting me. And I don't just mean individuals. I do mean the machines themselves too, because feels like there's a lot of pressure from the electronics. I'm actually talking more the machine than individuals. And there's just feelings about that. And those tips add up.
They do.
Big time.
Definitely the machines though. I totally hear you.
Yes. And the one that really frustrates me even more? When you're asked for a tip and all you did was literally hand me the burger or whatever that day. like there's no service. You didn't walk it over. You didn't take an order. I called it in. I'm picking it up, and you're just literally handing me the burger, and I still feel tip taunted. But there's nothing to, if at that point, I feel like all costs are baked into the product. If all you're doing is handing over the product and you're paid as a cashier or whatever, what am I tipping for?
Well, then when do we give ourselves permission to just not?
Oh, I've been doing it more now. I'm putting a lot more judgment into the tip taunting now. Like there are times where I will just flat out, I won't do it. Like, if it's that simple and it's something that's just with whatchamacallit. So to give you another example, so there's an establishment, like a coffee establishment, right? And if I'm not getting a fancy coffee and I'm literally just getting coffee and they turn around to the thermos thing and they press the button and they pump me a cup of coffee and they hand me the cup of coffee, I'm not tipping on that. That's literally coffee pre-made. Probably Folgers. I mean, no, I'm just kidding.
You're insulting the people.
No, I'm not trying to insult the people. I'm just on my soapbox. I'm sorry, Sierra.
Not the Folgers. That's what got me.
Actually, I like Folgers. Folgers, bruh. I think is a good coffee. I'm not a coffee snob. tea snob, not a coffee snob.
Oh, gotcha.
And, we all got our
thing.
So anyway, all right. So that is my what in the world is going on for this week. No tip taunting. Okay, so time for the next segment. And our next segment is called 21 Questions. And it's not 21 questions because we have 21 questions. It is 21 questions because these questions are so good that it might solicit 21 answers because, we be asking the fire questions here on the Kosh. So, Sierra, how you feeling? You ready?
I'm so ready.
Okay. Question 1. What are you grateful for?
I'm so grateful for people who accept me as I am, and I have people in my life that I get to do that for as well. And so I would say I'm really grateful to have a close-knit group of people in my life and a really solid circle of people I can trust. I knew that was something I always wanted when I was growing up, but to be able to have that and it is sustainable, and those are the people that I get to cheer for the loudest, and they cheer for me back, and it doesn't feel like a competition. Like, that is so cool. It also helps me be a more resilient version of myself because I have people who can pick me up when I'm down. So I'm grateful for having deep, loving connection in my life. I know that's not, sometimes I think there's areas in our lives where we have that and it transforms in a different way. And sometimes strong connection can ebb and flow depending on where you're growing in your life. But where I'm at right now, I have some really great people in my corner, and I'm really grateful for that.
What motivates you?
I am motivated by growth. I am someone who really struggles with just complacency and staying put. And not necessarily physically, but mentally, I struggle with not trying to see something a new way, or I do think really deeply. I'm a very reflective person. And so growth is really exciting for me, whether that be for myself or being able to see my friends grow into the highest versions of themselves, or growing in my career. I aspire to go as far as I can go in a wide variety of areas in my life. And that is really exciting. I think learning new ways to unlock my confidence is also really motivating for me too, because as I challenge myself to do more, it builds my confidence. And there's a time, I think, in my life where my confidence was much lower because I didn't know I could trust myself. And so even in a very simple way where I was like, okay, I'm going to go do the laundry when I get home after work. And then I didn't. And then I would tell myself the same thing after that. And I learned that I couldn't necessarily even trust what I was saying to myself because I didn't follow through on things that were very considerably simple compared to, the complexities of life. But it took a reframe and to stop overthinking things a little bit and following through on things that I'm telling myself so I can trust myself. And that also builds confidence. And so I'd say more that you can build the trust that you have in the things you say you're going to do, builds your confidence in yourself. And that has its own ripple or domino effect of growth and change and transformation, which is very cool. I would say what else motivates me is a world where people can heal, help, and hope. There's so much strength in our communities. And so it's really motivating to see who those people are and what I can learn from them. Even people like a dear friend of mine and mentor, Angela Zemke, goes by Angie. She continually just challenges me to think deeper about what we do she works at UW Oshkosh as well. And so in that space, but also I'm a chapter advisor for Gamma Phi Beta sorority, and thinking about how can I build a space that's going to challenge, provide hope for students, and also build their level of confidence and self-efficacy and believing what they do matters in that space. Because, even in the world of student organization and whatnot, this is a time where you get to screw up a little bit. It's a time where you get to learn about who you are and who you want to be in conflict management. And you're negotiating different parts of your life and learning what you can't negotiate to. And so I'm really grateful for her. I'm grateful for people who aspire to see a world that is kind and equitable. And I would say, I don't know, I'm motivated by change. I used to be so afraid of that. Change used to be like such a dirty word to me, because I used to be so afraid of letting go of things that could no longer be around. And now it's just a part of the flow of life. And so I'm motivated by change because I'm more excited to see what is ahead than what I've left behind. And that's a pretty cool place to be in. I haven't always been that way.
I just want to take a quick moment and give that big shout out to Angie. Because I definitely worked with Angie. She is fantastic. She definitely keeps those Greek organizations organized. And since you're going to throw out Gamma Phi Beta, right? Mm-hmm. And, I just want to make sure that I shout out my fraternity brothers at Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Hey. We got to do this. If we getting Greek, we getting Greek. No.
Yes.
All right. I'm just playing with you. All right. Next question. What grounds you?
I've had to think about this one a lot. I would say one, I think back to that piece of like trust in myself. And that's not just from myself, but the trust that people have in me too. Like it helps build my confidence. But at the end of the day, like it's really important that, if I have to have a hard conversation with someone or, like I need to manage some conflict at work or whatever, I can trust that I will speak up, and even if it's hard. And that really grounds me because there's times where I'll backtrack a little bit. I think trust has a lot to do with how we overcome fear. And when you're fearful, it's really easy to pull back, or at least for me, it was easy to pull back and having the conversations or not pushing myself to grow and whatnot because it was really uncomfortable and scary. And so the more that I've trusted in myself, more I'm able to overcome the fears that I have and also do what I need to do, whether that be giving a pitch for a new program or challenging myself to do something new. This past spring, I was in the Wisconsin Women's Network Policy Institute, which is a nonpartisan group, but focuses on community advocacy and policy for advancing issues of women and girls in the state of Wisconsin. It is an incredible group. And also, if I hadn't had the trust and the resilience to just try, I wouldn't have done that and met incredible women who are lobbyists and lawyers and advocates in their communities to make sure that women can achieve all that they can and have the social protections that are necessary. And so it was a really cool space, but it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't pushed through a little bit more and challenged myself, because historically rejection has been scary. But trust and being able to trust in the belief that I have to know I will do the right thing is really important for my own integrity and definitely grounds me. I would say also belonging and having a space where I can just be my most authentic self. That helps ground me a lot, because it's hard when you have to be, air quotes, like on sometimes to be, I don't know, I'm very conscious about how people perceive me, and I've tried to work on that a lot. And at the end of the day, I have to trust that I can't control all of that. And my friends would be like laughing and nodding their heads right now. Having a space of belonging where I can be exactly who I am and share my deepest fears and my greatest celebrations, that grounds me a lot, because it gives me the energy to reset and the moment to pause and reflect on my life in a different way. And I don't feel like I'm constantly on edge sometimes when I'm like nervous or challenging myself to grow in this way. That sense of belonging gives me a deep rest, and I'm really grateful for that. And it grounds me a lot.
What does success look like to you?
This is, this has transformed a lot over the years. Staying true to who I am despite wanting to achieve. I think maintaining integrity and not sacrificing my values for desired outcomes is critical. So if I don't achieve something, or I have to step back from a project or whatnot because it isn't aligning with my integrity or values, you know what that might not look like for success, or look like success for someone else if I, couldn't do that. But what was success for me is knowing who I want to be and what I stand for and the type of person I want to be. And so success is knowing who you want to be despite challenge. And I would say other forms too, like when something doesn't go right or you're struggling, the phrase just begin again has been so impactful because it takes the shame out of stuff, right? Like I think that's very cool. And so success is just trying again and not stopping just because it sucked or it was hard. Like just begin again, just try again has been really helpful. Success, I back to that circle of people. I have a circle of people who love me, but I have a circle of people who are also incredibly honest with me and will check myself. And that is, I would say, success, because you don't need a circle full of like yes people who are going to agree with you or believe the same way. I think that's a bunch of crap. And as comfortable as that is sometimes, and I think it is important to be with like-minded people, right? Like building community, you do have commonality, but you need people who are going to tell you, hey, I don't believe the same way as you on this issue, and here's why. And being able to have dialogue on that. That has been very cool to experience over the last few years, and being able to facilitate hard conversation and also challenging ourselves to grow or have a different outlook on whether that be politics or social issues or the way we handle conflict and friendship or any of those things. And so having a group of very, very honest people has been a cool thing. And also I find that to be an element of success too, because where can success live if it's under I don't know, like a cloak too? Like it's not, success is real and becomes more tangible when you know that you've looked at multiple angles and you have support, but also people who are going to be real with you.
What irritates you?
Unsolicited advice. Oh my gosh, that bothers me to no end. And in ECPR it said too, something I really love from Brene Brown is unsolicited advice is judgment. Unsolicited advice is judgment. And I hate it. Oh my gosh. It bothers me to no end. And, I think sometimes people have really good intention when they share things about us or to us, excuse me. And I have a friend who I love dearly. And sometimes she is really fast about, here's this thing and just don't get your hopes up about XYZ thing. And I'm like, my joy is not equivalent to letting the dust settle. And, sometimes there's lessons I need to learn on my own. And I think sometimes when there's advice, it's coming from a good place, but where are we centering the person that we're giving the advice to? And so many times the advice is for ourselves, the individual giving the advice, that it is for the individual receiving it. And so I think that is such a pet peeve for me. Oh my gosh. It's like, just because we're close, or even if we're not close, like, I think the unsolicited advice is judgment has been helpful as a frame. And some advice is great for you. However, it might center your perspective. I want to hear advice from people I feel really known by, if it's going to be, things of like deep intimacy about my own life that I'm getting advice on. Because there's been dialogue to repeat back that you understand where the angle or the way that I'm kind of trying to perceive a situation going on. And so, yeah, that one's tough.
Bruh.
I felt that. Oh my, no, I felt that. You are.
Yeah.
Yes, that was some gospel right there. Okay. What scares you?
I think, this kind of jumps back to the other one, but I think some fixed mindsets scare me a little bit. This is just how I am scares me a little bit, because I think we can easily lose where we can have aspirations in our life when this is just who I am. And for my example, like, I struggle with anxiety, and growing up, I thought, well, this is just how I am. I didn't realize that, now years down the line in the future, that after going to therapy and having different like tools and whatnot, that I can actually manage that and not be, for myself, not such a reckless version of myself with not managing that anxiety. And so I think what scares me a little bit is when, this is just how I am, we allow that to negatively affect relationships sometimes. But I would say what really scares me is losing community. In a culture where so many things can be optional or lost, I don't know, there's a lot. And when you're, at least for me being in my 20s, I think there's a lot that changes. In my late 20s versus my early 20s, so much has changed. In addition to, expanding on my values of who I am, you lose and gain a lot of people in your 20s because there's a lot of temporary stuff. But losing people that I deeply love scares the crap out of me. And I think that makes sense. I would say, what used to scare me a lot is rejection, but that's actually changed. And then, I think we'll get to that. But other things that scare me, inability to think critically. And I wish that was something that was taught more. And what's tricky about it is like our K through 12 system, you're not necessarily taught to think critically. And for many people, critical thinking, critical consciousness doesn't really happen until the higher education level. And that's not always an accessible thing for people. It's not something that everyone wants. But not having the spaces where you can practice challenging belief and thought is challenging, because then how do we know what is true and right? And same goes with like media literacy. Where do we accept what is true and real based off of like evidence and fact? And where do we allow anything anyone tells us to be factual? And so and that comes from a lens of we have to be able to challenge the messages that we receive, whether they be from our friends or families. I think that's a necessary part of learning and growth and development. I think what also scares me and what made me a little bit nervous about coming on the podcast today is not saying all I want to say. I get so nervous about wanting to say everything as I want to say it. And sometimes you just got to let it come out how it's going to. And if there's something that was left unsaid, well, then you just got to schedule part 2 or something. I can get kind of wrapped up in like making sure, and I think this is like my perfection fallacy of my life sometimes, is wanting everything to be the way I want it to be sometimes, because I want it to be perceived a certain way and I want the message I share to be said in a particular way. And it's easy to lose sight of the connection that is happening in the moment when I'm so focused on what I'm trying to bring to the table. And I think sometimes that scares me a little bit, because I can get a little wrapped up, if I'm being honest.
What recharges your soul?
Oh, what recharges my soul? Having fun and laughing, and sometimes just like being stupid with my friends and going for tacos. Like, I love that. And, as deep of a thinker I am, sometimes I need time where I'm not doing that. And so it really recharges my soul when I can just laugh loudly and not have to think so much. I love that. I would say feeling known when you have those connections in your life where you've had like deep conversation, or like someone remembers something about you, or they can describe you and you're like, that's better than maybe I could describe myself sometimes. Like, at least for my friends, like so many of them are truly just found family and extensions of like love, connection, hope, belonging. And so I feel so recharged when I can have deep conversation about life at like midnight or whatever. People who are really interested in like diving into the depth of things. I like to be challenged in that way. I would say learning new things. That's very cool. It's always interesting because you can always keep learning, and you can never know everything. But I like learning a lot. I think it gives me such a different way to have a new outlook or perspective, or tell me how I was wrong originally, because I need that too. Like there's a constant evolution of how we think, believe, and perceive in our lives, and that creates your framework in which you live. And so I want mine to be diversified and to come from a wide variety of people, places, and experiences. And that really recharges my soul. In addition to bids of connection, it's really nice when I could, even with my friends, be like, hey, can you go do this thing with me? Like, or did you listen to that song I sent you? And they're like, oh yeah, I did. Like, here's what I liked about it. Or even if they didn't, it like me sharing music is bid for connection. And so even being able to have that exchange, like that feels so good for me. And it might seem so little, but it means a whole lot. And that all those things really recharge my soul.
How do you define love?
I've thought about this a lot because I feel like love has been a big part of my life from year 27. I'm 28 now, but I think a lot when the book All About Love from Bell Hooks has been such a good read. But the way Bell Hooks just describes love is like really caring for each other's like spiritual growth. And in that way, like love is not necessarily just about you, but it's about the person who is growing into who they truly are. And so when I think about how I describe it, I think it's, and this goes for friendships or romantic love too, I think trying to see people become into the highest version of their self, and also using kind of Bell Hooks like description of like really being able to tend to that spiritual side, and they're growing and evolving and being able to support people without judgment. And so I think I'm trying to, I don't want to get lost in trying to describe this the perfect way, right? my fear. Seeing each other for who you are without guardrails, and aspiring for each other to be so comfortable, close, and safe that there's an environment that nurtures a level of safety, even if the other person isn't ready to take it. And being a very safe person for someone and allowing them to make the description of and definition of that, and being very open to it. And I think a different facet of love is taking care of myself so I can take care of others. My best self is the one that is deeply aware of my pain and how I take care of that. So for me, I never want my friends or family to be the sole keepers of my happiness. And so I think there's a definite part of love is also like loving ourselves deeply so we can love others deeply as well.
What is the most memorable life lesson you learned from a parent, a guardian, or a mentor?
I'd say the women in my family have made and make so much magic. And for me, because that's just the way that I've grown up, like there's not a lot of men in my family. So after my parents passed away, and that's a whole thing, I moved in with my maternal grandparents. And so my family has been all women. So my sister, my aunt, my cousin, my grandma, and then it's my grandpa. And so even just from like a systems level, like that's how it's been. But I think some of the greatest lessons is to thank you, deep, heartfelt thank you. I was even having a conversation with my grandma several months ago. And at least for her, like she wants to see us so happy. And I think sometimes I struggle with that because I think she's a little lost the sense of self a little bit in that, raising children and grandchildren as children as well. Even I was having a conversation of like, well, no, I want to come to visit. And she's like, no, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. And I was like, why do you say that? It's like, I know that you enjoy spending time with me. She's like, well, I don't want you to have to make the trip. And I'm like, but you are a destination. What do you mean you don't want me to make the trip? And she's like, well, I don't want you to have to go out of your way. And I'm like, that's what you've been doing my whole life. I can drive 45 minutes to visit you. And I think that's a deeper issue. I think one of the lessons that I've really learned from family is you are responsible for maintaining your adult relationships. And also, it's okay to ask things of people. In issues with like my grandma and whatnot, she is so concerned with our happiness and is so flexible that I think she somewhere down the line has forgotten to sometimes say, hey, but I want you here, and made that known. And so that has been difficult. and to see how that has like affected family for us a little bit, because there's some people who don't really come around and haven't been around in a while, and I think it's an optional thing for them. And so one of the greatest lessons there is, I think, making sure people know that they are a destination, maintaining your adult relationships, even with your family, like that is an area of responsibility that needs tending frequently. And also, we should have expectations of people that we love, right? And I think that's a healthy thing too. And not to be so self-sacrificial that what you have is not something achievable because you've allowed it to become such an optional thing. And I love my grandma so much. She's like such an amazing woman, and also made things a little optional sometimes, and it shouldn't be viewed that way. And I don't want that to be, like that's a sense of power being given, and we don't want to abuse that sense of power to not show up for her. As someone who has raised our multiple generations of women, being able to give our time is such an important piece of I love you. And I think that's where for me is like a love language, quality time is so big. And I want to make sure that I'm like honoring her in that. Other pieces. Sometimes you need to love people from a distance. I think even when it comes from like friends or troublesome like situations, whatever, like you can love people from a distance for a while so you can get to the point where you can be close again. Not much more I'll say about that. Things can always change. And so it's important to be here now and in the moment and enjoy it. I would say learning how to navigate conflict. When it comes to my upbringing, I think that's something where we've really just, suck it up and swallow it. And even like my grandpa and like, I don't know if I've ever heard an I'm sorry ever. And I think this is an experience I see in a lot of college students when they're navigating conflict for the very first time, is that negotiation of conflict and whatnot, like, can be a really scary thing. And for my own experience, I didn't know how to manage that well from going into my family and then having to experience it. So a lot of the first times people are experiencing conflict management, negotiation, whatnot, and what I'm hearing from my students is being in college and or wherever you're going to experience that. But for at least my students in like Gamma Phi, even trying to figure out like, okay, so we have a conflict, and trying to reframe it. And now that I've gotten older and I've had to challenge myself, conflict isn't a bad thing. I actually tend to like it, depending what it is, right? Like some things are really difficult, but because there can be something better on the other side. And so much of conflict is not about who I am as a person. Conflict doesn't always have to be the space where it's questioning who I am, but my behavior. And how do we separate the I'm trying to like say this eloquently, making it all about who I am as a person, when we don't have to question each other's like integrity like that, but what we can is talk about the behaviors that were harmful and work through that. And there's something on the other side, which is really exciting, and also typically leads to connection when you do it in a space that you agree that these are our goals of what we want from this, which is really good. I would say also strong mentorship will change your entire life. I talk about Angie a lot and whatnot, but I think she's someone who I find like such a strong woman in my life, and found family for sure. And I've learned a lot from her, and you learn a lot from people who want the best from you and who are going to be really invested in learning about you and your life. And so, I mean, even when I was in undergrad, I was in, oh my gosh, I was in a 7-year-long relationship. It was not good. And the number of times Angie and I had conversations about that relationship, and me just like sobbing in her office. And there's a lot of other students who can relate to that, because I know we've had conversations about it, to tell you, like, remind you what is and is not okay in your life, how to manage some of those situations when you're not sure how to talk about them. You're experiencing those things for the first time. Like, you need people in your life who can help guide you, not give you all the answers, that's different, but who can help you and also pick you up when you fall down, when you're trying to, help yourself. And so some of the best life lessons I've gotten are from strong mentorship from people who want to see me succeed and grow and as far as I possibly can.
Okay, let me set the stage. And it's this. Okay. You are at this keynote. You are the keynote speaker. You are going in front of your people. People are itching to hear what you want to say. They're crazy excited because it's you. But we got to set a tone. We got to set a vibe. So what is that walkout music for that setting? How are we getting down? What is the walkout song?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I feel like we need to play it. Oh my gosh. Without a doubt, 1 2 Step by Sierra and Missy Elliott, because when I was in college, all my friends would play that when I would walk into the room. And I didn't realize how happy that made me. And so it would absolutely be that song because it's been happening for years. And I just feel so happy and loved when people play it for me. So I think that'd be a really good one.
Okay. You have survived 21 questions.
Woo!
Facts. Okay. Well, we've been at it a while, so here's what I think we're going to do. And we don't normally do it at this time, but I think we're going to do it at this time because it seems fitting and appropriate before we jump into the next segment. And we're going to take a cider break. So once again, the sponsor for this episode, is our favorite cidery, Sunken Paddle. And what we're going to do is take a cider break. So Sierra, if you will take a moment, and what happens during a cider break is we literally crack open a cider. So Sierra's over here with the bottle opener. We got a couple of sifters here. We are going to be sampling the Kosh cider. And if you're a Kosh listener, you know about it. If you're not a Kosh listener, let me tell you about this yummy cider. That is a habanero and blackberry cider. Fabulously made with our assistance, but definitely made by this amazing cidery called Sunken Paddle over on 17th Street here in the Kosh. Okay, let's give a toast. All right, that's legit. Okay, please give us have a sip. Give us some feedback. Just give it a sniff, because I'm going to tell you, it has a unique aroma about it.
It smells great.
I like the heat associated with it because it has just this little peppery heat. Oh, yeah.
That's great.
You like that?
Mm-hmm. I do.
Yes. And the great thing about Sunken Paddle is they don't do the sweet cider.
Mm-hmm.
They do dry cider. And so, when people think of these ciders, and it's a conversation I have with the fellas, this is not who they are. This is who they are. I like the aroma of the habanero in it, but I like how the blackberry sits on the tongue.
It's not so sweet that it's ooh, no, this is great.
So, and that is why we needed to take a brief cider break so we can take a moment. And before we jump into the next segment, because that next segment is where it gets real. Not really.
I was as if we hadn't been already.
As if we haven't throughout this entire episode, right? No, I love the next segment, and the next segment is called Word Association. And this is where, Sarah, I'm going to say some words to you, and you're going to tell us what comes to your mind. And we have a long-standing tradition here on the Kosh. We always start with the same word, and that is the word of love, family, community. That word is food.
Food. Oh, the first thing I think is connection, but I would say for food, cookout. So good.
Bruh.
Facts. Okay. How do we wait? What part of the cookout do you partake in? What do you contribute or don't contribute to the cookout? And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean that is, some people just show up to the cookout and they're necessary because that is their job. They show up and the whole cookout doesn't really kick off until that person comes to the cookout. Or is there something you're in charge of traditionally to bring to the cookout?
Well, then that makes me want to change my answers. I feel like I haven't been to as many cookouts of recent, but dinner parties are really my jam, and I do all of that. So,
that changes the game.
it does. Well, and so I had like an Italiano night made. So I went to Italy with my grandma a couple of summers ago and bought a cookbook from like a winery in like the Tuscan area, and I bought the cookbook just for this lasagna recipe. So I paid like 60 euros for it, but I was like, I need to make this recipe because we had there like this lasagna in the vineyard and it was delicious. And so then I invited my friends and made this lasagna for 2 days straight and sides and salads and things like that. So I would say, cookout, haven't really been able to do much of that recently, but dinner parties, all over it.
All over it. Okay. Feeling that. Cocktail or beer?
Tequila sunrise.
Bruh.
You had that ready.
I did. That has been my go-to for forever.
That's the good old trusty.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So when you still go to joints, it's tequila sunrise.
I do like an espresso martini though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm feeling
Or if I'm feeling my inner Carrie Bradshaw, cosmopolitan.
Oh, we know a little something about these teenies, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure do.
Shop local.
Oh, love it. Okay, I would say I wish I could just reel off one place on the top of my head. I feel like now that I'm gonna kind of get reacclimated to Oshkosh, I have to figure out where my shop local places are, but I really like Wagner's Market. That's so good. But there's a place that I really miss when I lived in Salt Lake, and it was called Salt and Honey, and it was like a really large, like kind of craft and vendor market with like so many different like garland and Christmas decor, and I have so much of that still like in my home that I will probably have for forever. And so that's been such a cool experience. So I'm figuring out where I want to go now as things kind of have changed over the last, several years that I've been away.
Bruh.
Are you the Christmas person? Is that who you are?
Oh, I am the Christmas person for sure. I'm one of 2 trees are decorated.
Bruh.
You don't just gloss over that. You got 2 trees.
I do. Well, so one tree has ornaments for my mom, and the other one I have ornaments from all that I've been like gifted and thrifted and found or whatever. But ornaments are my favorite Christmas gift. Whether that be from like someone's travels or they just thought that I might like it. I love that. And so I don't really collect anything, but I do collect those. And it's so special to me because it's every single year the tree gets a little bit fuller, and it's turned into kind of a community experience. So like last year I invited friends over for a Christmas party and we did an ornament exchange, and it was so much fun. And some of my friends have started collecting ornaments for their own trees too. So it's been a really cool experience.
Hey, I'll tell you now, it amazes me because my wife definitely puts in a lot of work on the collection of ornaments over the years. And every Christmas when she puts up the tree, gosh, listeners, notice how I said when she puts up the tree. It is not a team sport. I'm just being honest. But every year when she puts up the tree and she pulls out those ornaments, and it just reminds me of the years when we received those. So like we've got there's got to be a Grinch ornament on there, or at least several. And then there's like a martini glass ornament and ornaments that my daughter made us through the years. And just watching it is such, I don't know, this recording of family history of things that happened. Like ornaments hold memories.
They do, and I think that's what makes them so special.
Facts. Okay, you're putting me in my Christmas movie mode. Maybe that's maybe there needs to be a Christmas. Well, I guess they've done Christmas movies on ornaments. That's not a new one.
Depends on what version that you want.
Well, that's fair. Yeah. Concert.
Need to go to more. I would like to go to a Noah Khan concert, but have not yet. So,
okay, who is that?
Really popular, like the Stick Season album.
Okay,
homework.
I've got things to learn.
Yeah.
What's the last concert you've gone to?
That's a great question.
Wait, what? Has it been that long?
It really has been. I think when I went to the Hugh Jackman. Oh gosh, what is the movie that came out that was really popular? I'm so bad about this. the Greatest Showman tour.
Oh.
I went to that. That was very cool. But I haven't been to a lot of concerts. Like, it needs to be an experience that I dive into in the future.
Okay. Well, we've got receipts, so Sierra needs to go to more concerts, y'all.
Do you have receipts?
Got receipts.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Streaming.
Oh my gosh, 90s rom-coms.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, what's your favorites?
Oh, My Best Friend's Wedding. I love that. Anything Julia Roberts. I love it. Oh, the movie The Holiday. I think that's early 2000s, but with Cameron Diaz and Kate Winslet. So good.
That's definitely one of the favorites in our house.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I think there's such an element of nostalgia for me, and because I watched all those movies growing up, so I love them as an adult now.
Okay. That's a good choice. And those rom-coms are pretty good.
They are.
They
They're
do a
excellent,
pretty good job.
actually.
All right. Politics.
Oh,
we changed a word. We decided to go in a different direction, Kosh listeners. So we're adding a new word because I just think it's fitting for this time frame.
Can I like just a sigh?
Bruh.
And that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah.
No.
I can go into more depth. If we're just doing word association, I don't even have a word. That is just a collective sigh.
No, you go ahead.
I mean, do I continue?
Oh yeah, look, definitely. It is wide open. These are your word associations. Let's go.
I think now it is so important to be connected to community right now, but also politics. Okay, so the way it was phrased to me with the Wisconsin Women's Network, and I will forever appreciate it, is politics is behavior of people. Policy is what is really happening. And so we have to remember at the end of the day, what is the policies that are affecting people, and really looking at the root of that and finding multiple sources in order to engage in that level of work. Also be connected to your local officials. All voting starts local, all of it. And it is so important that we vote, please. And I think it's difficult when, we live in a political landscape that people can easily become jaded and tired because it is exhausting for quite a bit of people. But we don't want to lose our sense of power. Each person makes a difference. And that's why you have people who are canvassing and going door to door and calling you and texting you, is because at the end of the day, like a few votes in one voting ward can change different outcomes in elections. And so it is so important to vote and remember what is a show with politicians and what is the policy, and knowing where your values align is going to be so important. And I think a lot about the poem of "And Then They Came for Us" from like World War II era and whatnot too. And so it's really important to not just consider ourselves, but to consider our neighbors. Where your care is, you will dedicate your time and you will dedicate your vote. Think critically.
Last word, diversity.
Intersectionality.
Tell me more.
Yeah. Diversity is not, it means so much. It's race, class, gender, your life experiences, sexuality. And so where those pieces of your life overlap will create different meaning in your life. And so I think so many times, and especially in like the college level, like as we're having conversations about what diversity means, it can be talked so much about just being like race. And it's not just that. Like that is definitely a facet, but there's so much more. And so what does it mean to be, I will speak from my own experience, my own identities, like a white first generation college student versus someone else who has a very different experience. And those pieces that intersect into your identity will frame the way that you view things in a very different way. And so that's why it's so important that we have diverse communities, and also your community is diversified because you will learn different perspective, because not everyone believes the same as you. And also sometimes people know, in a lot of cases, and I'll speak for myself, there's a lot of people who know more than you too. And buckle up the time to learn.
Facts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you have survived word association.
Hey.
Hey. Okay. Next segment. Next segment is called the Kosh Hidden Gems. This is your opportunity to share some hidden gems with the Kosh listeners. Those hidden gems don't have to be in the Kosh. They can be anywhere. It usually works out that it's either something that everybody knows about, but they don't know some details about, or maybe it's something that most people don't know much about. So what's your hidden gems?
Well, I think my first hidden gem is going to be from my hometown, Waupun, Wisconsin. So about like 40-ish minutes away from Oshkosh, right outside of town, the Horicon Marsh, both national and state wildlife refuge, and such a cool place to go and experience nature, and also to just go with friends or family to like, there's like a 3-mile long like auto trail, but a lot of people will bike or run on that trail too. And it is such a cool place to be, to feel connected to nature in a pathway that is more accessible. And so there are some hills, but you could definitely still like use obviously bikes and whatnot, but if wheelchair accessibility, like things like that. And so it's been a really cool, like family friendlier community space where you still get to be out in nature too, which is awesome. I used to go out there every single day in the summer when I used to live back in Waupun. And so it's every time I go back, maybe not every time, but I try to go back and like go through that trail too. They close it during winter, but when it's open in summer, there's also like a floating like boardwalk too. And it's really cool to see like the wildlife and species that are out there. So go see what your environment looks like, because it's important that we take care of it. Other hidden gems. I'm looking for some of my hidden gems in Oshkosh, but I would say I love going to Menominee Park. That is such a special place for me. Sometimes I'll take my hammock or I'll go for picnics with friends. And in general, I love being by water. I find it so like relaxing and fun, and that has been such a cool thing for me. Other hidden gems, though, I think are people and organizations. And so I'm trying to find different organizations to become involved in. But I would say one of my gems right now is Gamma Phi Beta. I love that organization so much, and I think the women in the organization love it too. And so when we have organizations that last so long, I mean, they last for a reason. And the values of love, labor, learning, and loyalty are so cool and amazing. But also, like, organizations like Gamma Phi do a lot in the community too. And so they were actually just in Appleton for Girls on the Run. And so part of their philanthropic partner is Girls on the Run and building strong girls. And so how can we build confidence in girls to become strong women in their communities? And so we don't always, like, there's a cool approach to social organizations, because they're not just social organizations, but they're trying to create transformational spaces for their communities too. And if they're not doing that, well, then we need to have a conversation. But that's cool. Also, even when I was going for coffee with one of my students recently at New Moon, there was like a ukulele group there. I have a ukulele, and now I kind of want to join, because they were like, there was someone on stage literally just playing ukulele, singing about beer. And I was like, I have to be with these people. I thought that was so cool. And so if there's any, people on this listening from the ukulele group, you might see me soon, because I think that would be so fun. And I've been looking for different ways to like do things that are just not like on my phone. And I want to write and read and things like that. But I also playing ukulele with a bunch of people who like are just having a good time. Great.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you right now, that ukulele group goes hard.
Bruh.
Don't sleep on them. Like, they're for real.
That's so cool.
I hear so many positive things about them, just wonderful things. Like, I just know I've heard from multiple people, like, that group is cool.
I love that.
Yes. Okay. And, I got to ask about this Horicon Marsh. What is that small city that gives everybody all the speeding tickets?
Which one?
I believe it's Rosendale.
Rosendale.
Yes,
yep.
Rosendale. Do you got to drive through Rosendale to get to the Horicon? I mean, because I don't know the region all that well, but I'm trying to understand, because that's going to be a factor on
right.
if I'm going to go.
Well, so that's when you set cruise control. Like I do in the city. You can take the Rosendale route, or you can take Highway 41 to Waupun.
Okay.
So, and get on to 151, I think. So.
All right.
It's like, oh yeah, no, don't speed in those small towns. They will get you.
No. Look, Rosendale is legendary. There's literally T-shirts
At the gas station. Yes, and they're so happy about it.
I know, but you know what? No one's speeding through there.
No.
Nah.
I've never gotten a ticket, and I am committed to not getting one.
Ever?
No.
In your life?
No. Never got a speeding ticket ever.
I am clutching my pearls. I don't even know how to feel about that.
I do like a solid 7 over, so
Okay.
maybe I should be admitting that, but
Hey, look, I'm with you. My goal is, I believe the ticket line, depending on what the speed limit, it's either 5 or 10. So if it's highway, you got to stay under 10, and if it's in town, you got to stay under 5. That's kind of how I range.
yeah. No.
I mean?
That's kind of the range I follow too.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I monkey around with it. That's just me. I am surprised I met somebody who's never got a traffic ticket. I'm gonna knock on some wood for you.
Thank you.
Just keep holding that true. Okay. All right, that was fantastic. I love the gym. You know what? Before we go any further, I do want to go back to something that you mentioned that we did not elaborate on, because I think it's a fantastically cool thing, and that is you are a twin, and I don't think I've ever had a twin on before.
Oh.
Yeah. So me not having a twin, got a sibling, not a twin, and all the curiosities of people who are twins, like, is there really like magical subliminal things that happen? Are there? Did you used to get dressed up alike when you were young? All of that, like, I got all the stereotypical questions that I think people would want to ask a person as a twin that they never get to ask a twin.
I mean, ask away.
Well, those were the first two.
So yes, we were dressed alike for, I don't know how long, maybe until we went to like kindergarten or something. And, it's cute until they start whining about it. And so until we started whining about it, we dressed the same. But now I look back at pictures and I'm like, no, that was adorable. I can get it. So.
Okay.
What was the other question?
The subliminal messaging.
Ooh, I don't think we necessarily got that. So my sister and I, even people in our family, friends, whatnot, like, have said, like, you guys could be, we've never had met twins that were so different. So different. Like, even she has 2 dogs. I have 2 cats. Now, I like the dogs too, don't get me wrong, but just, it's a lifestyle thing. But we're so different. And so I think that inhibits some of that natural, connection like that sometimes. Yeah, we don't necessarily have that, but we were best friends with another set of twins in high school, and I feel like they had that a lot.
Oh, so you were best friends with another set of twins.
Yeah. And you know what? That's always a kind of a funny little thing to talk about. So. Okay.
What's cool about growing up with a twin?
I think it's interesting because so many times people, especially when you're growing up, like, make such a big deal of it, and you don't know that it's like a less common or special thing because it's just your existence.
Right. It's your normal.
It's your normal. But it is cool to have someone who's had similar life experiences to you. Now, you have different versions of those life experiences, but I mean, growing up, like, I had always been really afraid to try new things by myself. And I think part of that stems from having someone who could always be with me. And our cousin, Michaela, who was always coming with us too, 'cause she was born like a month earlier. And so it was kind of like this, like, we were like triplets almost. But having someone who could be there alongside you, even if you weren't, vibing with each other that day, was cool, because being able to have a shared set of experiences is not something that everyone is going to have with you, and that was very unique to us. And so being able to be girls together and grow up with each other is really special.
All right, last question about twins.
Sure.
All right, what is the coolest or weirdest thing that's happened to y'all as twins?
Coolest or weirdest? That's a good question.
I'm not gonna, and I say this because I just feel like if I had a twin, that would be like my ride or die mischief partner. Like we would just be, when we were kids, I would have just been like, "Yo, bro, let's do this."
Oh, see, I don't feel like we weren't really like that, and so it was interesting. Is even there was like 4 sets of twins in my graduating class.
Wow, 4?
Bruh.
Yeah, and we had
What was in that water?
I know. Well, even in our dad's side of our family, there's like 5 sets of twins, and our mom's side, there's 2.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I don't know. But our graduating class was like 160 some. So 4 sets of twins is like a lot.
A lot.
But 2 of them had like switched places in class, like midway through class one time, just to see if people would like figure it out. And that's just something Sydney and I couldn't do because we don't look enough alike because we're fraternal.
Okay.
But I would say like sometimes people confused us, like, especially when we're younger. And that was always funny because you're like, what do you mean you had that conversation with so-and-so? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And then they're like, no, we talked about this. And I'm like, no, we didn't. And so that was, always a goofy moment.
Oh, yep. I can see that happening.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. Well, at this time, before we go any further, we are going to take a quick brittle break.
Hey, Timber, this is Orson.
This is Yao.
Hashtag the Brittle Daddies. Timber, every week you've got amazing guests, and we want to give them something for being part of your experience.
Let's give them the pecan brittle. It's the perfect brittle, the right combination of sweet and savory.
How about you give this to your guests who have the sweetest stories?
And if your guests or listeners would like to find out more about Share's Ghana Style Brittle, have them check out www.sharesgsb.com.
So sweet. Okay, we're out.
Deuces!
Okay, so that was our brittle break. And normally, and I'm going to send this shout out over there to our friends over at Charest. Orson, if you're listening, Yao, if you are listening, you need to send me some brittle so we can make our guests try the brittle. We ran out of brittle. Otherwise, brittle break is actually a brittle break. It's pretty cool.
That would have been fun.
It would have been fun. But the next time, but just so you know, it is delicious. And if, you know what? I'm going to get you a package of this brittle. That's what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll put a bow on it and turn it into an ornament so you can know.
Bruh.
I will always view you as the Christmas young lady now.
Great. Oh my gosh, what a compliment.
It is. I don't think that's a negative thing to say.
No, it's not.
Not at all. Okay. So, all right. Our next segment is my favorite segment, and that segment is called Story Time. It is an opportunity for our guests to tell us and the Kosh listeners out here a story, and that story can be about absolutely anything. And I'm actually pretty excited about this story time because
Bruh.
I can tell you got one wound up here. So, Sierra, let's go.
I do have one wound up, and I feel like I hope that this is a message that can relate to people. And so I think right off the bat, I hope I can be a big sister, auntie, friend to other people who are kind of like listening to this message. And so I really want to talk about love and like aspiring relationships because I think issues of love are issues of life. And there's so much to be said and there's so much that is left unsaid. And I want to talk about the brave moments where I didn't leave things unsaid and I was truly authentic. And I think building that bravery muscle is so important. And so for me, that's what I want to talk about. So basically, I mean, year 27, now I'm 28, I think the theme of my life was wanting to be more brave. I had really struggled with that because I consider myself a brave person now, but it's because I have a lot of fear. I think in order to be brave, you need to have fear. Like that kind of flows together. And there's a lot of ways in my life where I've really held back. Like even books that I hypothetically wanted to like write. Like there's one where I had like a title of like all the things that I did not say. And I was like, why does that have to be the narrative in which I live my life, all the things that I did not say, but I can write about now. Like, it's honestly, as insightful and full of wisdom that might be, it's not really good for the plot. And because the plot is real life, and I'm like, where am I shying away from being my most authentic self because I'm afraid? And so building my bravery muscle has been a big one. And so gearing up for the story today, I actually did ask my friend if it was okay to share, and he said it was. And so I say that because I think stories and narratives that involve other people also need a level of respect and consent too. And so I'm not just sharing this willy-nilly, but with deep consideration and respect too. But I have a friend of mine who I've had the biggest crush on for literally years. And it was the most agonizing thing, because I would think about oh my gosh, this thing happened, or does he like me, blah, blah, blah. And to backtrack a little bit, that was a big deal even to have feelings for someone else, because before that I had been in a 7-year-long relationship and ended very poorly. Ended up, we were living together. I took over my sister's lease. This is all my last semester of college. And then moved to Utah, and without any of my friends or family around. And that relationship needed to end. There were so many signs and ways that I had to grow through that. But a lot of fear and trauma about, starting over with someone else someday, or just even being open to the idea of love and dating and letting someone into that part of my life. Because other than parents and guardians, your partner is going to see the deepest, most intimate version of you. And who you spend that time with is so critical, important. And I just adored everything about this guy. And we're great friends to this day. And so I still do in a lot of ways. But over the course of the last year, I actually did finally muster up the courage to tell him how I felt. And that is the scariest moment of my life. I literally said, I feel like I'm going to throw up.
Bruh.
It is so scary to say what has been on your mind. And for me, what has been on my mind for literal years. At some point, I was like, I can't keep doing this to myself. There hits a point where either you're going to say it or you never will, and you never get to find out. And I was like, I don't like the idea of never finding out. And that's not good for him. It's not good for me. It's not good for the life that I aspire for. And I talk about being authentic all the time, but I was being the least authentic person when it came to issues of myself and my soul and wanting belonging and desire and all of those different things. And so actually did have this conversation with him, and I was so nervous because we are great friends to this day, but we're great friends then and had been friends for years. And I was so afraid that that was going to jeopardize our relationship together. And I was not afraid that he was going to respond poorly. That isn't the case. But fear just does something to you. It frames the anticipation or nervousness in a certain way that can hold you back. And I knew at the end of the day that he was going to take care of my feelings, right? And me for him too. Part of me mustering up the courage was also mustering up the courage to be rejected if that was going to be the case. Because it's also important that if someone doesn't feel the same way as you, you have to be able to allow them to just say that too. And it's not an issue of you're a terrible person, or that's such an immature way to experience feeling. And now to this day, I'm so grateful that I did that. Spoiler alert, it didn't work out. That sucked. We sat on the couch and we talked about it. And I was like, I don't know how you're feeling, but this is something that I've been feeling for a really long time. And I want to be really honest about that. And if you don't feel the same way, that's okay. But I need to tell you that because I think you knew it was coming. And he's like, yeah. He knew it was coming. And you know what I'm really grateful for is that he let me just have that moment. he didn't take that. And I mean, it would have been nice if he would have said something at the same time, but I needed that character development moment to be, you know, I was living my own rom-com moment of telling this man how I feel about him and how much I adore him and whatever. And he let me to come to him about it and have that moment. And that was really special because, you know what? He said he didn't know, and that's okay. But for me, I have to take that as a no. Because if you're not sure, like, I want someone who's going to be a hell yes for me. And he deserves that too, right? Like, there needs to be a level of reciprocity there. And it was, I mean, to not have that be reciprocated was, it was awful. I'm not going to lie. I held it together though when I was there, but I immediately went to one of my best friend's places after and just lost my everything. But I also, you know what? This isn't a story about rejection and feeling sad and, you know, it's a story about, you know, being my most authentic self and having a moment that gave me more confidence. Being rejected didn't steal the best of me. It gave me the best of me. And that was such a beautiful moment because it showed me exactly who I am and who I can be. And now I know when the moment is right that I can say how I feel and do it bravely and be the version that both of us deserve. And that is really, really cool. And, you know, I actually eventually did, like, we did talk about this. And I was like, you know, like, we never did really follow up in that conversation. And I was leading it. And I was like, you know, like, I want to move on and whatnot. And so I was like, can you tell me no? I was like, and you know what he said? He's like, Sierra, will you be my friend? And I was like, yes, I accept. And it was such a beautiful moment because we do have like a really beautiful friendship and it has a lot of like really intimate points. And also you can have deep, intimate relationships in your life and they're not necessarily romantic ones. And that is the power of connection and being with people. And so now I know that when love does look me in the eye, that I won't shy away from it and I will recognize it because I know what I want. And I know that I want it to be celebrated and loud and reciprocal. And I will be really authentic about it. And so I share that because I think sometimes people can struggle with saying exactly how they feel. And sometimes even to people that you're with, but tell the people how you feel. What are you going to do? Wait for years like I did? I mean, I can't imagine had I not had that conversation that I would still not know. And also I couldn't allow myself to move through that experience and those feelings had I not actually acknowledged them. Because now, like, I am dating. And that's a really exciting part of my life as someone who's in her 20s and has healed from this toxic relationship, as many of us have, and knowing what I want for my life, because I do want a partner someday. But I also want someone who wants that with me. And you know, for my friend that this didn't work out with, I want that for him too. And I want him to be able to let love in and enjoy it and celebrate it. And I know he wants it back for me. And so, I mean, it was also a beautiful moment to grow our friendship because we both agreed that we feel closer today than we did before. And I am a more confident version of myself having been rejected than not trying at all. And we can surprise ourselves when we take that risk, that chance. And that really kind of flows back into what I was talking about before of being able to trust myself. I know for a fact that I can be honest with someone and perhaps as importantly, I can be honest with myself.
Facts. Wow. Thank you. That just had such of a level of vulnerability to it. And I felt that. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now I guess me and the Kosh listeners are just waiting for the update on your rom-com.
I I think that might have to be a part 2.
Yeah, might be a part 2 because that's that I feel like this is something that would happen in the rom-com.
Right? This is definitely part of the rom-com.
Right, so it's part of the rom-com. So we're just setting it up that you're gonna have to come back when after some of these dating experiments are.
I think so too. But you know what also is exciting about it is I'm not in a place where I think a while back, like, tried dating even before, like, I had told my friend how I felt about him, and it was never gonna go anywhere because I hadn't acknowledged that part of myself that ached to know. And now I don't have that. I'm not in a place where I will have that comparison. And so I can actually explore something in a very healthy way and also be fully centered on getting to know another person and wanting that connection 100% versus splitting that, because there's just this like cognitive dissonance. And that is more fair to the people that I'm exploring that with too.
Oh, I can see that.
Yeah.
Like if you had not closed that chapter or got clarification, then there's always this comparison.
Exactly. And I'm like, oh, that's not fair. And it's actually really unkind and honestly, I would say like emotionally like irresponsible.
I was thinking my term that in my head that just floated in was that's like relationally unhealthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. All right. You done did some things.
Yeah. And I'm really happy about that. Like, it's exciting, and to have that level of confidence going forward, that trickles into other areas in my life too, not just like love and relationships, but knowing that I can speak up when something bothers me, or to celebrate more loudly for other people. Like, it's allowed for a different level of self-expression, and that's very cool.
Facts. Okay. Well, Kosh listeners, you know what time it is. Love it. Love it every single time. That means that it is now time for the topic of the week. And our topic of the week is picked 99.9% of the time by our guest. And guess what? This week is no different. So, Sierra, what's our topic of the week?
Education.
Education. Okay, let's go.
That's so broad, and I think deeply impactful. I'm just going to kind of pick some points here, but one, for me, education has been so transformative because it taught me what I could not have known if I had not been in those spaces. Education, to be clear, doesn't have to just be in the space of higher education, but being able to learn. But for me, in a higher education space, being able to be exposed to ideas and people and beliefs that I had not had before to shape my outlook on life has been so transformative. And so that's one of the outcomes we talk about when students go to college that you get outside of just your degree. I went to school and, I thought I was going to be an anthropologist, and I went into higher education. But one of the things that higher education taught me, in addition to giving me like degree to qualifications and whatnot, was the ability to have richer, more meaningful conversation. It taught me about being able to question things, that level of critical thinking and critical consciousness, ability to understand and analyze, take action against like different systems. And that is a level of power I didn't know I could have. And it's interesting because I feel like even through high school, like I was always just like, I don't know, like I didn't really care about school at first. I think that has to do a lot with trauma of like losing my family and that not being understood, and being a deeply feeling person, but also feeling very angry and sad, because you can't feel your emotions until you're like developmentally ready. And so by the time it was just so welled up inside of me, and no one really knew how to help me with that. I think some of that comes from a generational like approach to mental health and support and whatnot too. And so I don't blame anyone for that. It's just an experience that I had. And so I didn't really like care about school as much at first, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh girl, you got to get it together. Like, also for anyone, it's never too late to make a different choice and decision.
Oh, facts.
Bruh.
Big time.
And so when I was going through school and stuff, I was like, well, like college is kind of my option. I was like, well, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And there's different options and everything out there. But I was thinking about, well, who do I want to be? And I want to be someone who contributes to my community. I want to be someone who learns, and I want to have a decent career. And going into higher education and whatnot, like my goal at the time, I mean, was truly to like get a degree, but I got so much more out of that than I could have ever imagined. I was getting, you know, a different social network and connections and the ability to think critically. And that continued to expand as I got my master's. And one thing that I really took away from that was a book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire, and talking about until you are exposed to knowledge, until you know, you will continue in the same cycle that you exist. And so oppression continues because until you have something that changes the information, allows you to think differently, then we kind of run into this like hamster wheel of life, and this is how it is. And that education gives you power to make different decisions. It also gives you power to think about the system in which you exist. And so that hamster wheel that you're on, you're like, oh, like some of that questioning can be like, oh, why do we do it this way? Then thinking critically is thinking about how things happen and why they do. And then from there, you can kind of dissect the systems and that operate around you. And so life isn't just happening to you. You are part of the system, and you can see how you kind of flow within that, and also what can you change. And I think that sometimes we don't recognize powers because we have not recognized how to be critical.
Okay. I gotta process that.
Yeah. And when I say critical, I don't mean negative, but
No, I was thinking critical thought.
yes, critical thought. I don't know if there's more I want to say about that, huh?
Yeah,
right.
I was letting you flush this out.
Yeah, I'm thinking more about it too. Sometimes I surprise myself in these conversations as well. But there's more to it. And so when you can see the system in which you exist, you have power to alter that system and to ask different questions. Why is this the system that exists? The same goes, you know, the phrase of like, well, who has this seat at the table? Why the hell is there a table? That is a part of the question. You can disrupt things by asking different questions and then pointing out some of the flaws and within those. And what a cool tool in order to transform your communities. And that's why that book is banned. So,
Bruh.
Is it banned?
it is. And I don't think in the United States, but in different countries it is.
Okay.
Because when you give the people knowledge and a sense of power to create change, I mean, we see that in history, why so many, like, not having the right to vote, things like that. Like, you have a ability to create movement. And that's more than just critical thought, right? Like, that's other social systems. But
my big challenge would be actually having the real narratives to process and then have critical thought about, right? Because the premise in which some of our critical thought that we're negotiating with aren't even the real narratives of the situations.
do you have an example?
Well, they're the narratives of the oppressor,
Yes.
telling us what their happy outcomes are or what they want us to believe are the pluses of the oppressed or their reasonings for oppressing. Or sometimes you don't even know you're oppressed because they've created such good stories in history and you don't even know. And that's what I mean. So it's hard to critically think about some of that because the foundational basis of it all is not necessarily the unflawed truth. That makes sense?
It does. And I agree with that. And I think that's where family narrative is a form of education and resistance. It makes a lot of sense because until there's information that is known, then you are stuck in the cycle.
Oh, yeah. And family narrative does it all the time. Because, look, there's so many things you never learn about the family until you get much older. And those other people who hold the stories get much older and they're willing to share at that time. And then sometimes there's never a point in which those stories are really willing to be shared until something beyond control happens, and then it has to come out.
That's so true. It's interesting, the stories that I've heard now that I've gotten older, and I'm like, ooh, that was a spicy one. I can see why we haven't talked about it in a while. And at the same time, it's interesting to hear stories where I'm like, can we get over that now? Because honestly, that's not that for my like issues in my family. I'm like, we're mad about that from like 15 years ago. That's stupid. Like, let's get over it. Different, but yeah.
No, it's valid though.
Yeah.
Very valid.
It is really interesting.
Now you went places. Now.
I know. Well, for education too. Well, and I think for me, I think my first kind of main introduction to like wanting a life that is immersed in education was having history courses in high school. That was kind of my first experience looking into the past, because for me, I really focus on context and how context informs future and decisions and whatnot. And so I'm a very context-based person. So even at work, it'll be like, well, how does this system operate? And I might not replicate that at all, but it helps me make informed decisions. And one thing I was talking about with one of my friends recently, it's like, well, the whole thing about like history repeating itself. And I'm like, well, he has said like history tends to rhyme, which is interesting. It's not exactly the same, but there can be cycles of repetition and reoccurrence. And that's really interesting. And so even being able to have accurate history, I think that kind of pours into what we were talking about a little bit a few moments ago, and narratives from the people who had experienced life, that is essential. And also that's where the world of anthropology has gotten it wrong and created so much harm, because it's been kind of, sometimes with the way it's done is incredibly selfish, invasive. And also there's a lot of stories that are unwritten for a reason.
Oh yeah. They're not shared.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the power of the storyteller goes to those, the victorious and those in power.
And when we live in the world that we do.
Yeah, there's so many of those stories that never get told or surfaced. I mean, we're actually living in a time where we're watching people try to not even hide the fact that they're trying to oppress stories by book bans and by not wanting to talk about different things, or trying to control even conversations about cultural context in so many ways. So, I mean, we're living in it, and shoot, we're not even hiding it no more.
No, it's very explicit. And I mean, we continue to see this in current events. When I was in some of my master's courses, I took a PhD class in critical race theory, and just even being warned, because we're in the state of Utah, which is a red state, that the news might show up and, you know, like ask to see our syllabus and ask us what we're talking about and things like that. And that is history. And that the cleansing of American history, there are no words to describe how damaging that is.
I love that term, the cleansing.
Mm-hmm. Well, and even now we're talking I'm ripping off this damn Band-Aid. The Trump administration talking about mass deportations. How is that not ethnic cleansing? We have cleansing of our history. We have ethnic cleansing. Like, we've got to say it. We've got to say it. And I'm okay saying that. We're looking at patterns of behavior that are replicating themselves. And honestly, things that haven't gone away. We haven't lived in a just, equitable society. It's never going to be that way when you have power that is built for one person, and it's been white men with white women benefiting from that structure a lot. There's so much to be said there. And, what were you going to say?
I got questions.
Yeah.
All right. Here's my big thing right now. So you took this And I want to have this conversation real quick because I just think this is powerful. You're the first person I've had that is actually talked to that's taken a critical race theory class, right? So because there was so much hoopla around it, right? And you didn't take this class until the master degree level. Oh no, doctorate. Did you say this was a doctorate
It's a
level?
doctoral class, but I could take it in my master's.
You could take it in your master's, but it's a doctoral level class, right?
Yes.
So, all of this, they're teaching this in 4th and 5th grade, and all the harm that was done over it was not happening. So I just wanted to point out this fact first. But can I ask you, well, I kind of want to ask you, were you really surprised by anything you learned within it? What did you actually learn in it? Because it's one of these terms that is hypercharged, but I don't think most people didn't know what it ever meant in the first place. So what did you actually learn in it? And what did people get wrong about it?
That's a really great question. I mean, you do learn different theory and whatnot, but the critical race theory it's summing up a history of people, right? And so when we talk about theory, that is informing the lens in which you look at something. And so there's kind of an assault on utilizing critical race theory to look at the lens in which we view America. Okay. Yes, I think we can agree that people feel some type of way about that. It's interesting because you're learning in the way that describes American life. Critical race theory is kind of reiterating a life that is already being lived and giving it a specific name. And it happens to be that people don't want to agree with that and fight you on it because it means something about their character. And white people feel threatened by that, the level of white fragility. And I think what's tricky about it is we have an increased level of nationalism about being like more than just being like a proud citizen or person within the United States. If you're not a citizen, right? Like there's a lot of non-citizens here who love this country. And the history tells us that this relates to critical race theory too, of the United States truly was built on white supremacy and ensuring the power of white people. And that is, the roots are so deep that you can't untangle those either. And so what people get wrong about it is they think it is an attack against character. Well, I think you reveal that for yourself when you deny critical race theory, when you deny the stories of people, when you deny history. You are tattling on yourself, saying, this doesn't matter to me because it hurts my damn feelings.
Bruh.
Feelings.
And, I think that happens in a lot of ways.
Feelings, not facts.
Yes.
Let's ignore the facts because it hurts my feelings.
Right. And if it's making you feel, and white people, like if it's making you feel some type of way, why does it make you feel that way? And I think that means there has to be a level of self-acknowledgement that what people say is true. That these are real lives and stories, and it is true. And even so, like critical race theory, CRT, it informs us the way life plays out even in like modern day. And so it's interesting. So you have like Tara Yosso's community cultural wealth. So what this is saying, when students of color come to college, some of it is, okay, so students come from all different, backgrounds, areas of life, but by having a wide variety of students who are a part of that community, that educational community, that increases your knowledge as a whole collective. And that's why, oh gosh, what did they just undo at the Supreme Court recently?
Affirmative action.
Affirmative action. This was an argument in affirmative action because by having a more diverse space and classroom, you all learn more, in addition to giving people a chance in our communities that wouldn't have had one because of white privilege benefits that have been happening for centuries. I mean, it's so, so deep. But that shows us the power and importance of understanding it that much more because it influences lives.
You know where I think the complexity is personally? I think the complexity is that this is all viewed as new knowledge, but it's old history, right? And so because it's not something that was traditionally taught throughout school, I think we would have been better as a nation, as an entire nation, if we had been honest about who we were and our sins, right? And we taught those instead of covering them up and hiding them and not acknowledging them. So now when we have technologies changed and some of this stuff is surfacing or people are teaching this, and maybe it was always getting taught, but it wasn't getting taught in the main public school mainstream, right? And now that information is like crazy accessible because of technology, and you can find whatever you want if you really want to and you put in the effort, right? And some people are putting in the effort and really learning about it. But I think the hard part is coming to terms with, this really can't be true, because if this was true, they would have told me this the entire time when I went to school. I think I'm educated, or, whatever. But none of this ever, because none of it has come up, right? Mm-hmm. You don't talk about like any of that stuff in these history classes and stuff like that. Like, you get the traditionalist American history. You don't get our true, you get sprinkles, really light sprinkles of it, and not necessarily the severity of harm and how it continues to play out to this day. And I just think that's hard for people to come to terms with, because they're like, well, if this was really real, they would have told us about it. No, they wouldn't have told you about it. And that's hard. I think it's hard. And it's hard to think that like this system that you trust and you love has kept things from you, or didn't fully prepare you, or didn't fully give you the whole historical context of who and what it is. That's just where I'm at with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense. And I think we see that come through even with the vernacular. So in the K through 12 system, and even like in some areas of higher education too, people will tell you about slaves or things like that. And I'm like, these people are not slaves. They were enslaved. They're enslaved. And so we perpetuate misinformation of the history, even by the words that we use.
Right. Like, because they try to make slaves sound like it's a job.
Yeah. or it was already like that, like that's not true. Like enslaved people, like that makes a difference. Ugh.
Nope. Facts.
It makes such a difference. I appreciate what you're saying about like the discomfort too. And I think that has a lot to do, and why I appreciate critical thinking and critical consciousness so much is, especially in the K through 12 system, you're taught to memorize and to repeat. And this is how it is. Well, if you don't question that, but you're not taught that that's okay. Who is holding your hand saying, well, if you say that this is wrong, like you're going to get a bad grade for it. And so how do we punish people for even questioning that, is this true, when it means I can't get the score that I need to get in order to be, air quotes, unsuccessful? So the way we define success in education is repeat, dump, repeat, like, and continue that cycle. And so we continue oppression by not addressing the trueness, and also creating a different way in which people learn so they can explore and think on their own. But if we do that, we give people the power.
I think my challenge to it would be is that, like, because they don't teach these very valuable things in the lower levels of school, and that you basically have to go to the highest levels of education to have access to this knowledge, to have access to this critical thinking, to have access to know, because most people don't even know that they should be asking. Mm-hmm. And I include myself in that. I think about my grade school, my middle school, my high school level, and majority of my undergrad even, and not knowing that I should be asking these questions, or that there's this whole other historical context to this nation. And, and it makes me think about that. Like, the majority of people haven't gone to higher ed or had that opportunity, and those numbers are starting to shrink now. And they're not, and then you've got people challenging, curriculums that are being created where they do kind of want to lightly introduce some of this. And they're like, nah, none of it. Cancel them books. Don't ever teach that in our schools. Don't ever teach anything that's going to make us as a people look a certain kind of way or cause my child guilt or any of that stuff, right? Because that's what's happening right now, right? And it's just wild that you shouldn't have to take a doctoral level course to understand who we really are and what we really have done as a nation. And that only makes us better when we acknowledge our mistakes, our sins, and all those things, right? But we are not under any circumstance like near that. And so now you only have these few people who the greater majority would label elites who try to share the knowledge, and then it feels like something being imposed by elites. So then it can be discounted.
Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So like where if it was just taught as normal curriculum when you're in 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, high school, if you want to wait till high school, fine. But it should just be taught. This is who we are. These are things we've done. This is how it's woven into the fabric of our systems. This is why we've done things. Here's where we hope to become a better country.
Where there is critical theory, there can also be critical hope. And that is an important part of it too. And it was something that was really hard for me to digest because critical theory isn't just like in critical race theory, but there's a variety of critical theories, whether that be critical leadership theory or indigenous theory. Like there's a lot there. That level of critical hope, I think sometimes gets lost. And what does that mean when the dominant culture consistently denies true history? That's a lot to grapple with.
Facts.
I appreciate what you said about information coming from like the elites. Because, that doesn't necessarily, unless you're in direct community with people.
And I'm just saying that perceptionally.
No. It makes sense, though. I think there's a lot of people who can relate to that, too. And also, that's why, like, the ivory tower of higher education, it's inherently not built for almost everyone. Like, unless you're a wealthy white man, the space isn't built for you, and your level of access continues to dwindle depending on intersectional points of who you are. And you're gonna say something?
No, I was thinking, I agree with you. I do appreciate the efforts that I feel like have really been put forth. And then now we're starting to rescind those efforts.
I know.
That's what's jacked up.
Right. Well, and how that will create generations of perpetuation of lack of knowledge and disbelief, and I can't fathom.
I don't think we give enough credit to our American public, and even those who aren't American, just to our public living here in America, that we have the ability to critically think through these things and the resiliency to accept the truth. So then we can actually honestly create fundamentally awesome solutions to help us become our best selves in a better united nation, a better United States.
And a better world.
Facts. All right. I feel like I jumped all into your topic of the week.
But that's the point. And I love that because I feel like I'm just having a conversation with like a good friend. Like this is how my conversations with like other friends in my life go too. And so I think it's so good and enriching. And I appreciate that because I think this is a real example of where the magic is happening. If we need to have dialogue that's help us explore things to a new level.
Facts. And I think we do it really well here on the Kosh.
You do.
All right. Well, is there anything else you would like to share with the Kosh public about your topic of the week?
I think there is a major there's a growing sense of public, mistrust in education and what it can do for you. And I think sometimes it's really focused on, like I was when I went to college, because I was like, I need to get the degree and I need to make money. And absolutely, you want to do that. Like that's supposed to create access for you. Education will create access for you in so many other ways too. And I also recognize that it isn't as accessible as it could be for everyone. And that's why we need to push to have more access. And so I recognize that. But the way that we invest in our minds, our time, and truth will change our lives and change the lives of those around you who you spend time with. And so choose it wisely. And I encourage to everyone to continue to learn more and to ask deep questions. And if you're not sure where to start, ask someone around you, even if you're not sure if they know. Just start somewhere.
Big time. Oh, I wanna continue this so bad. But well, all right, here's all I'm gonna say. I think our challenge with higher ed right at this moment is what we've decided to do with it is, I believe there was a time, or at least I've been told there was a time, and I do honestly feel there was a time where the focus was about teaching us how to critically think. And now it's very career focused. And the difference to me of that is this: what higher ed is, because we are definitely headed towards, we want you to go to school and get this job, right? We want this job to prepare you for, or we want this higher ed experience to prepare you for your career in this sense. And it's very specific and very expertise. Whereas before it was like, if you went to school and you had a degree and they were like, anybody would look at you and be like, all right, they got a degree, you know, we can teach them how to do the things we need them to do for us. Right. But I don't feel like that's in the same place now. I feel like it's very career focused versus critically thinking focused, which to me means that higher ed then has switched over from creating leaders to creating managers. And there's a huge difference between being a leader and being a manager. And I don't know if we get that that's what we're doing, but we're creating less leaders and focusing on creating an army of managers. That's all I got to say about that. I'm gonna let that do what it do.
Mm-hmm.
Bruh.
Mic drop on its own.
Yeah. All right.
I agree.
You open some doors over here, Sierra. Okay. All right. Well, at this time, Kosh listeners, we're gonna start wrapping up this episode. Oh yeah. You know what that means. So first of all, I want to say thank you to our guest, Sierra. Fire conversation. Woo! We went spaces today. But to the Kosh listeners, I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for spending time with us. Thank you for giving us your minds and ears. Thank you for caring about another extraordinary individual living in our community, making it a better place, truly contributing. I hope y'all really listen to this conversation, because throughout it was thoughtful, it was powerful, it was educational, it was Kosh. And I'm so happy to have had it. As y'all know, we are trying to become the #1 podcast in all of Wisconsin. I can't do that without y'all. Need your help. What does that mean? I need y'all to do a few things. While you are listening to this, if you've got new segments you think we should do, you should let me know. While you're listening to this, if you think you should be a guest, I think you should let me know. If you are listening to this and you think you know someone else who should be a guest, you should probably let me know. Help make this show better. And you can do that by reaching out to us at askthekosh@gmail.com. Just go on and email us at askthekosh@gmail.com. You can also leave us messages. We do have a phone number, and that is 920-385-5073. And then what else do I need? Well, I need to get in front of more eyes and ears so we can impact more of our community members. And when I say community, I mean the greater community. I don't mean just the Kosh. And how do you do that? Well, it's called analytics. So while you're listening to this episode, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and fill out a review, and go ahead and give us that 5-star rating. These are all things that help promote this Kosh podcast, this jewel of a podcast, as I'm going to say, the people's podcast. And when these analytics do better, so does the promotion of this particular podcast. So I appreciate y'all out there. Okay, so we ain't done, y'all, Kosh listeners. We're working our way to the end, and you know what this means? that means it's shout out time. So, Sierra, what do you got?
Oh my gosh. Shout outs for best friend mentor, Angie Zemke. Love her. She should be on here. That would be great. My friends, Xander, Ellen, Alexis, Wade, Ben, my cousin Michaela, Aunt Sam, Grandma Sharon, sister Sydney. There's so many important people in my life, including all the members of Gamma Phi. Each person that I'm close with really does affect my life in such an instrumental way. And so where we choose our time, represents our values and what is important to us. And so you are all so important to me.
Love it. Okay. My shout outs. I want to send a shout out to Jax, the psychotherapist. Thank you for doing you. I think there is an amazing podcast in the future here being created. Thank you for the fire conversations that we always have. I appreciate you. Want to send a shout out to a partner in crime at my job, Brianna. We had this amazing conversation about leadership, and that was part of it, coming up with, there's leaders and there's managers, right? I want to send a shout out to my man, Peter Lee, over at Us Two Behavioral. If you've never got a chance to work with them, they have these amazing trainings. Check them out, serving our community. Probably the only marginalized community-led mental health facility. And that's amazing. They do amazing work, and they just cool. I got a tour of their new establishment, and just the work they're doing and how they're helping so many in our community is just amazing. I want to send a shout out to Rashad Cobb. I had a great conversation with Rashad Cobb over there at United Way, Brown County. Had this amazing conversation with him. Bruh, I will get back at you. I'm researching all the things you shared with me. I am about that life. And I want to send a special shout out to the organization Indus and my partner in crime at work, Andy. I got to go to Indus's. They have an annual event gala, this amazing gala. The food was fire. It's Indian food. It's fire. And the talent, the way the community shows up for it, the regalia, just the whole ambiance of it all was amazing. And my partner in crime, Andy, who was the MC for it. Nice work, girl. Go on and knock that out. You handling that. And then in Kosh tradition, because we have Kosh traditions, and this tradition will always stay, and it is this. Never last, definitely not least. Send that shout out to the wife for letting me continue to make this podcast in the house. Thank you, baby. I love you. Thank you for supporting me. And now we are ready to move on to the last thing we gotta do. Okay, so A, B, and C. These are your options here. And it goes like this. Option A, leave the Kosh listeners with some parting words of wisdom. Option B, you can tell the Kosh listeners, what would yourself today tell your 13-year-old self? And option C, like good multiple choice, you get an all of the above. So you can do both. Well, it's not real multiple choice, but I'm giving you an all of the above. So
You know what? Oh.
No, go ahead.
I'm going to choose option C. I'll start with the 13-year-old version of myself. To the young version of myself, you are so much brighter and smarter and capable than you ever thought you could be. And you're so loved and honestly, funny and have a great sense of humor and are constantly learning. And so don't lose that edge, but continue to challenge yourself, continue to grow, to continue to be authentic, and know that continuing to be the most confident version of yourself will open doors to being your most authentic self. And that is a pretty special person that a lot of people want to get to know. Other parting words of wisdom, I would say position yourself. And if you're not in a position to achieve your goals or to be where you want to be, find someone who is and help them position you too, because being where you want to be is all about being in community. And position yourself to grow and learn. Position yourself to have tough conversations. And at least for the one I was talking about earlier, the issues of love and relationships, that I was positioned in a very safe way to have that conversation because I knew how that person was going to take care of my feelings already. even though I was afraid. And so in other areas of your life, it is so important to position and preface to create a sense of safety and what you need for yourself. And so do what you need to do. At the end of the day, no matter what you do, make choices that will make you proud to be who you are, even if that means taking, a difficult road sometimes. But we need to be able to live with our choices at the end of the day and, honor those assignments of your heart and soul. And I would say build strong girls into your life so they can become strong women, because that is so transformative. And I wouldn't be a strong woman today had I not had other people to lift me to where I am. And so big shout out to all of those people, because you've changed my entire life and continue doing so.
All right. What'd you think?
This is so much fun.
Yeah, it's the Kosh.
The Kosh.